Well, come on up now, sugar. Don't you mind that old dog Blue? He don't bite none. He just smells the travel on you. Let's all go on and pull up that wicker chair right there beside me. Yeah, the one with the faded cushion. Lord knows it's seen better days just like the rest of us, I reckon. Let me pour you a glass of this here, sweet tea. I made it sun-brewed this morning just the way my mama taught me. Plenty of sugar and a squeeze of lemon to cut the dust from your throat. Sit for a spell. Rest your bones because you look like you've been running a race against time. And honey, let me tell you, that is one race nobody ever wins, isn't it? Something, though, just sitting here listening to those cicadas start up their evening song sounds like a heartbeat, don't it? The heartbeat of the whole world slowing down for the night. I've been sitting on this porch for going on 84 years, watching the cars go by, watching the seasons change from green to gold to gray. And back again, folks drive by and they wave and they see a sweet old lady in a rocking chair knitting an Afghan and smiling like she hasn't got a care in the world, just a simple country grandma living out her twilight years in peace. But you know, sugar appearances can be a mighty dangerous thing to trust. Cause you look at me and you see the wrinkles and the gray hair and the smile, but you don't see the shadow standing right behind me. See this here on my lap, this beat up old metal box, rusted almost shut, used to hold Ritz crackers back before you were even a thought in the Almighty's mind. Well, it ain't held crackers in 60 years. I dug this up from under the floorboards in the pantry. Just this morning, my hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped it, scared me half to death. Just looking at it again, I kept this box hidden from my Henry for 50 years of marriage. God rest his sweet soul. He was a good man, a hard man, but a good one, and he loved me with everything he had. But there are some things you just can't tell a man, some things you bury deep down in the dark earth of your soul, and you plant a garden over it, and you pray to Jesus that nothing ever sprouts up to tell on you. I never told my kids, neither they think their mama is a saint. They think I never made a mistake. I couldn't fix with a needle and thread or a hot supper, but they are wrong, sugar. They are so wrong. I am fixing to open this box for you today, because I got a feeling in my chest like a tight fist, and the doctor says my heart is ticking on borrowed time, and I realized something last night while I was staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl. I realized that secrets are heavy things to carry to the grave. They weigh down your spirit, and I want to fly light when the Lord calls me home. So I need someone to know. I need you to know the truth about what happened that winter in 1952 and what I had to do to keep this family from starving to death, keep them from falling apart at the seams. You look at these old photos on the wall and you see smiling faces. You see the American dream, but you don't see the patches on the knees, and you don't see the empty bellies, and you surely don't see the night. I walked out to the crossroads with this box in my hands and made a choice that changed everything. Folks like to say the past, but that's a lie, sugar. The past is a ghost that lives in your house and eats at your table and sleeps in your bed. And today I'm finally going to look that ghost in the eye, so you drink your tea and you listen close. Because what I am about to tell you ain't pretty, but it is the honest to God truth, and maybe, just maybe, it'll help you understand that being strong don't mean you don't break, it just means you know how to put the pieces back together again, even if you have to hide the cracks now to understand why. A God-fearing woman would carry a burden like this. You gotta understand the world. I grew up in cause it wasn't nothing like the world you see out your window today. Back then the world was bigger and scarier, and we was all just trying to hold on to our little patch of dirt without getting blown away. I was born right here in this valley, back when the roads were just ruts in the red clay, and the only news we got came from the static on the radio or the gossip at the general store. It was the 1940s, sugar, and let me tell you, the air felt different. Then it felt heavy, heavy with dust and heavy with worry. Everyone was waiting for a letter or a telegram or the sound of boots coming up the walk. My daddy, he was a giant to me back then, tall as a silo and strong as a mule. He had hands that were rough like sandpaper, but gentle enough to unhook a catfish without hurting it. I remember the day he left for the war. It was 1942, and the whole town felt like it was holding its breath. We stood on the platform at the train station, and the smell of coal smoke and wet wool was so thick you could taste it on your tongue. I was just a little tyke, barely up to his belt buckle. And I remember he knelt down in his uniform, which scratched my cheek, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Rosie girl, you are the man of the house now. You take care of your mama." And just like that, he was gone, swallowed up by the steam and the noise and the war. Well, the war was a ghost that lived in our kitchen for 3 long years. We ate beans and cornbread, and we saved our bacon grease in a can, and we flattened tin cans for the scrap drive. Mama worked her fingers to the bone sewing uniforms at the textile mill. Her hands always smelled like machine oil and fear, but she never cried. Not once. Not where I could see her cause crying didn't put food on the table, and crying didn't bring daddy home. We didn't have TVs to show us what was happening. We just had the newsreels at the picture show before the movie started showing boys storming beaches and tanks, rolling through mud, and every time I saw a soldier fall on that screen, my heart would stop beating for a second. Thinking maybe, just maybe, that was my daddy falling down in the dirt in a place I couldn't even pronounce. Then came the day the war ended and the church bells rang for 3 hours straight until the ropes frayed and daddy came home. But let me tell you, sugar, the man who got off that train wasn't the man who left. The giant was gone, and in his place was a shadow. He was thin, so thin, his clothes hung off him like they were on a scarecrow. And his eyes, Lord have mercy, his eyes looked like they had seen the end of the world and forgot how to look away. He didn't pick me up and swing me around. He just nodded at me like he barely knew who I was and walked past me to the truck. And that was the first crack in my little heart right there, watching my hero walk past me like I was a stranger. Folks said, "Give him time, Rosie. He's got shell shock. He's battle weary." But I didn't know what those words meant. I just knew my daddy was broken. He sat on this very porch for days, just staring at the cornfield, staring at nothing, smoking cigarette after cigarette until his fingers were stained yellow. He wouldn't talk about the war. He wouldn't talk about anything. He just sat there shaking. Sometimes his hands would shake so bad he couldn't hold his coffee cup, and Mama would have to help him bring it to his lips like he was a baby. And I would hide behind the screen door and watch them, feeling a cold knot of fear in my stomach. One night, I woke up to a sound that haunts me to this day. It was a scream, sugar, a scream so raw and full of pain. It didn't sound human coming from my parents' bedroom. I ran down the hall, and there was Daddy huddled in the corner of the room, clawing at the wallpaper like he was trying to dig a foxhole in the plaster, screaming about mortars and Charlie, and Mama was on the floor with him, holding him, rocking him, whispering, "Hush, now hush, it's okay, you're home." That was the night I learned the truth about America and about men. I learned that all that talk about glory and heroes is just paint on a rusty fence. Underneath it all is just pain and fear and people trying to survive the things they can't forget. My daddy never really came back from that war. Not all of him anyway. He left his joy in France or Germany or wherever he was, and he brought back a silence that filled our house like a fog. And seeing him like that, seeing the strongest man I knew reduced to a trembling child in the dark, it did something to me. It made me realize that nobody is coming to save you, sugar. Nobody is really in charge. We are all just making it up as we go along, trying to keep the monsters at bay with a little bit of prayer and a whole lot of pretending. And that lesson, well, that lesson is what led me to do what I did years later when the hard times came for me, when I had to be the one to make the choice that no good person should ever have to make. We were poor, but we didn't know we were poor because everyone else was in the same boat, wearing flower sack dresses and putting cardboard in our shoes when the soles wore out. But there is a difference between being poor and being desperate, and I didn't learn what desperate really tasted like until I met my Henry, and the world tried to break us in half. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Sit tight. Let me wet my whistle with some more of this tea before I tell you about the golden years that turned to rust, so you listen. Now, after the dark days of the 40s seemed to fade away, the sun came out in the 50s, and Lord did it shine. It was a golden haze, sugar, like the whole world was dipped in honey. We grew up, and we forgot to be scared for a little while, and that was the sweetest time of my life. I met my Henry in the summer of '54, right there at the county fair, under the spinning lights of the Ferris wheel. He was leaning against a pickup truck wearing a white t-shirt with a pack of Lucky Strikes rolled up in the sleeve, looking for all the world like James Dean. But with a kinder smile, he bought me a candy apple that stuck to my teeth. And we laughed until our sides ached, and I knew right then and there I was going to marry that boy. We got hitched 2 years later in the little white chapel down the road and moved into a starter home with a picket fence that Henry painted himself. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had peace or so. We thought gas was cheap, and the radio played rock and roll, and we thought the hard times was something that happened to our parents, not to us. We thought we were invincible, sugar, just two kids, dancing in the kitchen while the pot roast cook believing the music would never stop. But the world has a way of turning sour just when you get a taste for the sweet stuff. The 60s rolled in like a thunderstorm. You could smell the ozone. Before the rain hit, suddenly the news wasn't about building highways and going to the moon. It was about a place called Vietnam, a jungle on the other side of the world that none of us could find on a map. But it found us all right. It found every single one of us. I remember the day the draft lottery started. We were all huddled around the television set, gripping each other's hands so tight. Our knuckles turned white, praying to God that the numbers wouldn't match the birthdays of the boys we loved. It was a lottery of death, sugar. That's what it was, pulling numbers out of a glass bowl like it was a bingo game at the church hall, but instead of winning a toaster, you won a ticket to hell. My Henry had a bad knee from high school football, so he stayed behind. But my baby brother Billy, sweet little Billy with the freckles across his nose, who used to chase fireflies in a jar, he wasn't so lucky his number came up and I saw the color drain out of mine. My mother's face, like someone pulled a plug in the bottom of her soul. She knew she just knew, because she had already watched one man come back broken from a war, and she didn't think she could survive watching another one come back in a box. We drove Billy to the bus station, just like we did with Daddy, all those years ago, but this time there wasn't no flags waving and no bands playing. It was just quiet, a heavy, suffocating, quiet young boys with terror in their eyes, trying to act like men, trying to be brave for their mamas. I hugged Billy so hard I thought I'd crack his ribs, and I whispered, "You keep your head down, you hear me, you come back to us." But he just gave me that crooked grin of his and said, "Don't worry, sis, I'll bring you back a souvenir." He didn't bring back no souvenir sugar, and he didn't come back walking. Neither. 6 months later, a black sedan pulled up the driveway and 2 men in uniform got out and walked up the path, and I watched from the kitchen window, feeling like my legs had turned to water. I dropped the plate. I was drying and it shattered on the floor, but I didn't even hear the crash. All I heard was the sound of my mama screaming on the front porch, a sound that ripped the sky in two. We buried an empty casket because there wasn't enough of Billy left to send home. That's what they told us anyway, lost in the jungle. They said missing in action. They said, but we knew he was gone. We knew the light had gone out of the world again, and that golden haze of the 50s evaporated like mist in the morning sun, leaving us cold and shivering in the reality that America wasn't a fairy tale, and that bad things happened to good boys who loved baseball and apple pie. After that, the town changed. People stopped looking each other in the eye. The music on the radio got angry, and the innocence we had cherished so much was buried right there. Next to Billy's marker, my Henry held me while I cried for weeks. He held me while I raged at God and raged at the government and raged at the rain falling on the roof. But even his strong arms couldn't keep out the fear, because we realized then that the wolf wasn't just at the door. The wolf was in the house, and we were all just waiting for the next bite. And let me tell you, sugar, that bite came harder than we ever expected. When the money ran dry and the secrets started piling up, you think the war was hard. Well, let me tell you, sugar, the peace was harder. Sometimes causing a war, you know who the enemy is. He's the one shooting at you. But in the hard times, the enemy is the bank and the grocery store prices and the silence at your own dinner table when there ain't enough food. To go around, we thought we had made it past the grief of Vietnam. We thought we could breathe again. But life has a funny way of kicking you when you are already down on your knees. It was the 80s when the bottom fell out for us. Folks called it the farm crisis. Now, like it was just some chapter in a history book, but for us it was a slow strangulation. Interest rates shot up to 18%, and the price of corn dropped so low it wasn't even worth the diesel to harvest it. My Henry, he worked himself to the bone. He was out there before the sun came up, and he didn't come in until long after it went down, trying to coax life out of dirt that had given up, trying to fix machinery that was held together with rust and prayers. I watched him wither away just like my daddy did, but this was different. Daddy was broken by noise and violence. Henry was being broken by shame. He was a proud man, sugar, a provider. He believed that if a man couldn't put bread on the table, he wasn't a man at all. And watching him look at the bills piling up on the kitchen counter, seeing the light go out of his eyes, it broke my heart into a million jagged pieces one day. The letter came, the one I'd been dreading, a foreclosure. Notice from the bank giving us 30 days to pay up or get out of the house. We built with our own hands, get out of the land where our memories were buried. I hid that letter. I stuck it right inside this tin box underneath the Ritz crackers, because I knew if Henry saw it, it would kill him. It would stop his heart, just as sure as a bullet. I sat on this porch rocking and praying, asking the Lord for a miracle, but the sky was empty and blue, and I realized then that God helps those who help themselves. So I did something terrible, sugar. I did something that makes my hands shake just to tell you about it. I drove into the city, to the rich part of town where the lawyers and the doctors lived. And I went to the house of the very banker who was threatening to take our farm, a man named Mr. Caldwell, who had soft hands and a cold smile. I knocked on his back door, not the front door, mind you, the back door, like a beggar. And I asked his wife if she needed help. Cleaning needed a maid. She looked at me up and down, looked at my calloused hands and my plain dress, and she sneered a little. But she said yes, she needed someone to scrub the floors and wash the linens and clean the toilets. So for 6 months, I lived a double life. I told Henry I was volunteering at the church hospital, reading to the sick folks, but every morning I put on my work clothes and I went to that man's house and I scrubbed the dirt off his floors while he was at the bank, trying to take mine. I washed his underwear, and I polished his silver, and I swallowed my pride until it tasted like bile in my throat. I earned $3 an hour cash under the table, and every single penny went into this tin box, but it wasn't enough sugar. The deadline was coming, and I was still short by $500, which back then might as well have been $1 million. I didn't know what to do. I was desperate. I was cornered. So I did the one thing I swore I would never do. I went to my jewelry box and I took out the diamond brooch my daddy had brought back from Europe for Mama. The only beautiful thing we owned, the only thing that proved we were somebody. I took it to a pawn shop on 4th Street, a dirty little place that smelled like stale smoke and desperation. The man behind the counter, he didn't care about the history. He didn't care that my daddy carried that pin through a war. He just put a loop to his eye and offered me a fraction of what it was worth, and I took the cash, and I walked out of there feeling lighter and heavier at the same time, feeling like I had sold a piece of my soul to save my life. That night I put the money in an envelope and I put it on the kitchen table next to Henry's coffee cup. When he came in from the fields, he looked at it and his face went pale. He asked me, "Rosie, where did this come from?" And I looked him dead in the eye and I lied sugar. I lied to the man. I loved more than breath itself. I said the government sent the rebate for the farm subsidies. I said it was a miracle. He broke down crying right there at the table, big heaving sobs burying his face in his hands, thanking God for saving us, thanking God for his mercy. And I just stood there rubbing his back, feeling the weight of my secret burning a hole in my heart. I let him believe it was providence. I let him keep his dignity. I let him think he was still the provider. And I never told him that his house was saved by his wife, scrubbing a banker's toilet and selling his mother-in-law's legacy. We kept the farm. We weathered the storm, and eventually times got better like they always do. But every time Henry looked at me with that adoration in his eyes, thinking I was just his sweet, simple Rosie, I felt a twinge of guilt sharp as a needle, 'cause he didn't know the steel that was underneath the lace. He didn't know what a woman will do when her back is against the wall and her family is on the line. Folks talk about resilience like it's something pretty, like it's a flag waving in the wind, but it ain't pretty sugar. Resilience is ugly. It's doing the things you don't want to do so the people you love don't have to. It's swallowing poison and smiling so they don't taste the bitterness. And that is what is in this box. The pawn ticket for that brooch and the pay stubs from the cleaning lady job, keeping company with the dust, and the ghosts helping me remember that we didn't survive on luck. We survived on sacrifice. Well, look at me rambling on like a sermon preacher when the church is empty, the sun has gone all the way down. Now sugar and the fireflies are starting to dance in the tall grass, just like little sparks of memory trying to light up the dark. It's getting chilly. You might want to wrap that sweater tighter around you. The night air has a way of getting into your joints when you get to be my age. You see that rocking chair right there next to you, the one that isn't moving, that was Henry's chair. It's been empty for 5 years now since the cancer took him. He went peaceful. Thank the Lord, lying in our own bed with the window open, listening to the crickets. He held my hand with that grip of his that never lost its strength, even at the end, and he looked at me and said, "Rosie, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. You kept us safe. You kept us whole." I just squeezed his hand and kissed his forehead and let him drift away, believing he had done it all himself, believing he was the hero. And I reckon that was the last gift I could give him, the gift of his pride intact. I never told him about the scrubbing or the pawn shop or the nights I cried in the bathroom with a towel in my mouth so he wouldn't hear me. I let him go to glory thinking he carried the world when really we carried it together. He just carried the weight and I carried the worry. Now that he is gone and the kids are grown and moved away to cities, I can't even picture in my mind living in apartments that don't have front porches, just quiet rooms and glowing screens. I sit here with this box and I wonder, was it right? Was it right to keep the truth from him all those years, to lie to the man I shared my soul with? And you know what, sugar? I think it was because love ain't always about honesty. Sometimes love is about protection. It's about standing in the rain. So the one you love stays dry. It's about carrying a secret so heavy it bows your back just so they can walk tall. And that is what family is. It ain't just blood and DNA. It is the secrets we keep and the sacrifices we make that nobody will ever put on a plaque or write in a history book. I'm telling you this now, a stranger on my porch, because my own kids, they wouldn't understand. They see the world in black and white, right and wrong, truth and lies. They don't understand the gray sugar. They don't understand that sometimes you have to do the wrong thing for the right reason. They would look at this pawn ticket and they would feel pity for me. And I don't want their pity. I want their respect. I want them to know that their mama was a warrior, even if her battlefield was a kitchen floor and a jewelry counter. So here is what I want you to do for me, sugar, and you listen close, because I am tired and I am ready to go inside and rest my eyes. You take this story, you take it with you back to your world of fast cars and loud phones, and you think about it. And then I want you to go find your own people. You go find your mama or your daddy or your grandma. If you are lucky enough to still have her in this world, you go sit with them, not with a phone in your hand, but with your heart open, and you ask them. You ask them what is in their box. You ask them what storms they weathered. So you could sit there in the sunshine. You ask them what they had to sell or trade or suffer to put the clothes on your back. Don't you wait, sugar. Don't you wait until the chair is empty and the silence is the only thing left talking back to you, because let me tell you, the silence is loud and it is full of questions you can't get answers to no more, everyone. You meet everyone walking down the street with a smile on their face. They're dragging a shadow behind them. They're carrying a box just like this one, full of rusted dreams and hard choices. Be kind to them, and for the love of God, talk to them while they still have breath to answer. Now go on, get out of here. This old woman needs her sleep, and you got work to do. You got stories to find. Leave the box here on the table. I think I am done hiding it. Let the wind blow the dust off it. Let the ghosts out to breathe. Finally go on. Now, sugar, and drive safe, and watch out for the deer on the highway. They run wild this time of night, just like memories.